2026 Canadian Grand Prix race notes. Sabrina's race notes. Number 1. Kimi Antonelli. 4 wins and a different kind of test. 4 consecutive wins. That is the statement Kimi Antonelli has made through the 5 rounds of the 2026 season. But what makes Canada different from the previous 3 is the context. In China, he had the pace to control the race. In Japan, the safety car worked in his favor at exactly the right moment. In Miami, he had to manage car problems and sustain pressure from the reigning world champion behind him. And here in Montreal, George Russell was ahead of him for much of the race. Kimi did not simply inherit this win. He waited, he pushed, and when Russell's power unit failed, he led and controlled it from there. He even set the fastest lap on the last lap. That said, I want to be honest about something I'm sitting with. His execution was not spotless this weekend. In the sprint, what might have been a victory turned into third because of a move that was too aggressive at the wrong moment. He cost himself that result. It did not carry into Sunday, but it tells you something about where he still has room to grow. He is a talented 19-year-old who I deeply respect and believe in. He's also still 19. That matters. The maturity will come. I believe it will be something to watch. The championship picture now has Kimi ahead of Russell after just 5 races. Russell himself said it is Kimi's to lose. I don't think we should get too excited or too settled just yet. There is a very long season ahead, but as of right now, Kimi Antonelli looks extraordinarily at home in Formula 1 2026. Number 2. George Russell. When everything goes against you. I want to be direct about what happened to George in Canada. It was not a performance failure. He took sprint pole, won the sprint, took Grand Prix pole, and was leading the race when his power unit let him down. None of that is on the driver. And yet the picture is much more complicated than just bad luck. Even accounting for the DNF, George did not look massively quicker than Kimi at a circuit that has historically been a Russell stronghold. He has taken every Montreal pole since 2024 and won there last year. This should have been, if anywhere, where he pulled away. Instead, Kimi was on his pace throughout and at times looked like he had the edge. There is also a pattern forming that I think George has to grapple with. He was compromised in qualifying in China, the safety car cost him in Japan, and now this. The unlucky moments are real, but a 43-point deficit 5 races in is substantial, even with a long season ahead. What I want to see from George is something he has shown before: composure under pressure. His reaction after the retirement, throwing the headrest, getting a suspended fine from the FIA, was a very human and very understandable. But the public framing of it, the language about the gods not wanting him in this fight, if he carries that into the next races, it starts to look like something else. The pressure is off, as he put it. Good. Now use that. He is a clever, experienced racer who knows exactly what he's doing. So my read is that the pressure is off framing is partly a tactical move, a way to put the weight onto Kimi rather than absorb it himself. And that is smart. Whether it works is the question. Canada is one circuit. He has other ahead. I'm not writing George Russell off just yet. Number 3. Lewis Hamilton. His best Grand Prix for Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton has his best race for Ferrari in Canada. He said so himself, and I believe him. He was elated from the first session, and it carried through to Sunday. What is interesting to me about this weekend is what made the difference. Lewis ditched the simulator and went into deep data instead. He chose a setup direction Ferrari had reportedly never tried, and it transformed the car from the first session. He has now done this at 2 of his best races for Ferrari, China and Canada, without the simulator. His read on it is straightforward. He's old school. He came through the junior formulas and into Formula 1 before simulator preparation became as central as they are now. His comfort with the simulator is, in my opinion, similar to how some of us of our generation learn to do things on computers rather than phones. Things like major purchases happen on our computers, not on our phones. It's a generational difference. Doesn't make it right or wrong, simply our comfort level. That said, I agree with those who say we should not rush to conclusions. We have seen encouraging starts to Hamilton's Ferrari tenure before. One weekend where he found his groove, even a very strong one, is not yet the full picture. His qualifying and sprint were not flawless, but his race absolutely was. I hope this is the turning point it felt like. And the Hamilton and Verstappen battle in the closing stages was genuinely compelling. Two former champions going at each other for a podium position, with both finding something extra. Their cool-down room exchange afterward was warm and genuine. I hope that kind of moment truly ends the remainders of the 2021 drama for those fans still carrying it. Number 4. Charles Leclerc. Worst weekend, best teammate. Charles described this as the worst weekend of his Formula One career. That is a serious statement from a driver who has had difficult weekends before. What I find myself thinking about is the sequence, a difficult ending in Miami, and now this. 2 races in a row where Charles has struggled significantly. I'm wondering whether something is building emotionally, whether the frustration is starting to show in his driving. One thing I will say, his response to the Hadjar incident showed exactly who Charles is. Hadjar apologized immediately, and Charles moved on. No grudge. Clean. That kind of professionalism in the middle of what he described as his worst weekend is notable. Number 5. Red Bull. Progress flattered by circumstance. Max's first podium of 2026. There is a yes but quality to it that I think is worth being honest about. The progress from Red Bull since Miami is real. Laurent Mekies has said they cracked some fundamental issues and the car has come back together in a way that Max has not felt since before the season. That improvement is meaningful. The problem is that the podium was aided by Russell's retirement and McLaren's strategic failure. Max himself acknowledged it with his usual candor. He said he felt better in Miami than in Canada. And then there is the public tension with Mekies over setup direction. Max said he pointed to his preferred direction multiple times, went along with the team's choice partly to demonstrate it would not work, and was frustrated by quali. Mekies, for his part, framed the disagreement as a necessary part of learning together. He called it an "I told you" dynamic that the team actually needs to make progress. I believe Mekies, but I also hear something in that framing that speaks to a broader dynamic. This is a team in which for years Max's instincts drove the direction. Now there is a new team principal, a new power unit partner, and a car that is not working the way he expects it to. The internal balance of how decisions get made is being renegotiated. That is a hard thing, even in the best of circumstances. Isaac Hadjar had a harder time. He looked strong on Saturday, close to Max in both quali sessions, happy with the direction. By Sunday, he could not explain where the pace had gone. He picked up 2 penalties, one for a defensive move on Leclerc that he apologized for directly afterward, and could not match Max's race pace. I want to separate the performance question from the character question here. The apology was the right move, and the fact that it was immediate matters. He is hard on himself, willing to own errors, and that is something. But the pace drop from Saturday to Sunday, without explanation, is the kind of thing he needs to understand to move forward. If Red Bull is going to truly challenge Ferrari, they will need to capitalize on what they learned in Miami and Canada quickly. The window is not infinite. Number 6. The tire gamble that backfired. This was a weekend that promised a great deal for McLaren and delivered very little. Starting both cars on inters when the track was clearly drying was, in hindsight, a clear mistake. I acknowledge the decision may have had logic at the time it was made. The track was greasy, drizzle was still coming in. Andrea Stella and both drivers signed off on it. That is a reasonable process, even if the outcome is painful. The problem is that some rivals said afterward they knew from the moment the tire blankets came off that McLaren had made the wrong call. That gap in read is the more concerning thing to me. Number 7. Alpine. Franco and Pierre have traded places. Something has shifted at Alpine, and it is worth directly acknowledging. Before the break, Pierre Gasly was the clear established benchmark in the garage. Franco Colapinto was finding his way. That dynamic has reversed. Franco has now had 2 strong point-scoring results in a row, Miami and Canada. My instinct is that part of what changed is that both drivers now have the same car. There was significant concern through the early races that something in Franco's machinery was not right. If that has been resolved, what we are seeing now may be Franco operating on a more level playing field. And on that level playing field, he is currently holding his own against one of the more underrated drivers on the grid. Pierre, meanwhile, described himself as absolutely nowhere since Alpine upgraded the car. He is scratching his head about what is in the data, vaguely alluding to something not feeling right. That is a different problem from Franco's early struggles, and I hope it gets addressed. Pierre is too good a driver to be in this position. Number 8. Racing Bulls. Arvid's DNS and a frustrating weekend. Arvid Lindblad was the story at Racing Bulls before the race even started, and then he was not in it. He had made Q3 on a track he had never raced before. He scored a sprint point on hard tires as the only driver to take that compound. It was genuinely exciting to watch, and it made me want to see him in the Grand Prix. However, he could not start the race. That stung. It was not his fault. It denied him the chance to show what a full race distance would have looked like. I'm confident Racing Bulls will work through it, but it was a real loss of valuable data and an opportunity for a young driver who was clearly performing. Liam Lawson took 7th. He was not happy with it, and the race pace was not where he wanted it to be. Number 9. Haas. A difficult upgrade weekend. Haas brought a significant upgrade package to Canada, and it introduced some challenges that were not there before. After bad pit stops, the race became essentially about damage limitation. The team approached it as professionals. No drama, and after the race, acceptance and focus on what comes next. That is a team that knows how to process a difficult weekend without losing itself in it. I'm confident they will find what they are looking for from this new package. Number 10. Williams. A weekend of contrast. Carlos Sainz scored a point. Alex hit a groundhog in FP1, missed sprint quali, and then was taken out of the Grand Prix by Oscar at the hairpin. Those are two very different experiences for the two sides of the same garage. For Carlos, he started on inters, which he admitted was a mistake and owned it immediately. Major respect for that. He dug himself out of a difficult position, and he made the most of what there was. For Alex, this is a season that has been consistently disrupted. Reliability issues, accidents, and now this. He has had almost no uninterrupted running. He said in Canada he was still learning deployment management on lap 12 of the race when Piastri came. He needs time in the car. Every disrupted session compounds the gap. James Vowles continues to build something at Williams. There is clearly more happening behind the scenes than the results shows. It is brutal to watch the headwinds, both within and outside the team's control, continue to affect their trajectory. I want them to succeed, and I believe they're on the right path. It is just harder than it looks from the outside. Number 11. Toto Wolff and the art of managing a rivalry. Toto's comments on the intra-team battle between George and Kimi were, to me, one of the most interesting things to come out of this weekend. He acknowledged that things got close, that there were moments where a double DNF was one mistake away, and that he would have no choice but to, quote, turn it down a notch, end quote, if the situation required it. What struck me is how thoughtful that framing was. He did not say it reactively. He said it with the measured awareness of someone who has thought this through carefully, probably for a long time. I think Toto is a rare figure in Formula One leadership right now. He is simultaneously a co-owner, a team principal, and a people manager, and he holds all three with a kind of intellectual honesty that I don't think is common in the paddock. The decision to bring Kimi in alongside George, knowing what it would eventually produce, required that same kind of analysis. He was not managing one driver, he was managing a team, a partnership, and a championship. At the same time, I hold a note of skepticism. Both Russell and Antonelli made very diplomatic statements after the sprint race and the Grand Prix about how they know how to race each other and it was all fine. These are true racers with real hunger. The diplomacy is real, and so is what it is covering. What happens when the points gap narrows and the pressure becomes acute is the more interesting test. The Mercedes precedent that they're all reaching for, the Hamilton-Rosberg in 2014, ended the way that it did. Toto knows that better than anyone. The reminder to his drivers that racing each other hard is a privilege, not a right, was exactly the right message to send. Whether it sticks is another question. Number 12. The 2027 rules question and what it means. I included an article in my research notes from Autosport that I want to highlight right now. It's called How Ferrari and Audi Could Decide Verstappen's F1 Future. I think it's worth your time to read, less for the driver narrative and more for what it says about the technical and political landscape right now within Formula One. And, quote, agreement in principle, end quote, was announced to shift the power output balance from 50-50 to roughly 60-40 in favor of internal combustion for 2027. By the time the Canadian Grand Prix weekend arrived, it was clear the agreement was not as agreed as it had appeared. Mercedes and Red Bull are in support, Ferrari, Audi, and Honda are not, at least not on the 2027 timeline. The objections come down to cost, competitive advantage, and self-interest, as always they do in these conversations. And every manufacturer has an agenda here, including the ones supporting the change. That is just Formula One politics at play. What I want to keep my eye on is which entities, FIA, FOM, teams, manufacturers, have the tools and the will to navigate this. Number 13. Formula One on social media, a question worth raising. I've read another piece in Autosport, Why We Need to Talk About Social Media in F1, which I also think is worth your time. This article put into words something I have been sitting with for a while. The argument, simplified, is this. Formula One's social media strategy has moved so far towards making drivers look like teenagers that it has lost something. The gladiator image, the sense of genuine rivalry, the aura that drew people to the sport in the first place. And as with our conversation with Terrence Dove, who compared racers to knights, I have to say that that's the imagery I'm sticking with when it comes to my respect for racers. With that said, I agree with the author of this piece. Not entirely, and not without nuance, but in substance, yes. I do not mind seeing drivers as human beings. That is valuable. But there is a difference between humanizing someone and reducing them. When the content strategy for a team is built around drivers doing silly things together, you create a problem. You're asking fans to see teammates as friends when in reality, teammates are each other's primary rivals. The first person standing between you and the fastest car in the grid is the person parked next to you in the garage. That is not friendship. It is an uneasy alliance at best. I also think about who the audience is. When broadcasters in the United States denigrate racing as a sport, looking at you, Stephen A. Smith, the answer should be showing how extraordinary these athletes are, what they're capable of, and what it takes. Instead, the content sometimes goes in the opposite directions, making them seem like college kids, and I think that is a missed opportunity. As the author of this article noted, Senna and Prost would not have played hide-and-seek for social media. They were fierce competitors. That fierceness is part of why we still talk about them. I'm not saying every team should manufacture tension, but I do think there is a version of telling the story that is both entertaining and honest about what is actually at stake when these cars leave the pit lane. As the author noted, Sebastian Vettel, of all people, captured it well when he asked, quote, "Honestly, what are we doing here? Racing or ping pong?" End quote. Sebastian worked with the party team at Red Bull. He understood the assignment. He also understood the classical elements of what makes a sport great or worth protecting, and I think he was right. Number 14. One thing I'm watching, the intra-team competition. Something a few analysts noted after Canada that I want to echo because it feels important. In 2026, the most compelling racing is happening inside teams, not between them. George and Kimi going wheel to wheel, Lewis and Charles operating at completely opposite ends of the spectrum at the same circuit in the same car, Colapinto and Gasly trading places in the standings, Oscar and Lando navigating a tire call together that unraveled differently for each of them. Part of this is a function of the yo-yo racing these regulations produce, but I think part of it may also be a symptom of the early regulation cycle. When the cars are not yet fully understood and the field is still sorting itself, you establish internal hierarchy before external dominance. You fight your teammate first. Whatever the cause, I find myself watching this closely, and I think it matters for the kind of championship this season becomes.